As the Ukrainian offensive is picking up speed, more and more footage is emerging of destroyed, damaged or abandoned Western-sourced armored vehicles. It is plausible that during this war, Russian forces will eventually get their hands on such abandoned or damaged Leopard 2 tank and haul it back to Russia for a closer look. So this video asks the following question: what could Russia gain from such a captured Leo 2? Could it somehow profit in the short term from the acquired knowledge? And could it somehow make its own tanks better in the long term? Oryx, the well-known portal which tries to tally images of destroyed weapon systems, has several Ukrainian Leo tanks listed, either as destroyed outright or abandoned during a battle. The list includes mine-clearing variants. Now, it doesn't really matter if there are already in reality more Leos lost. Oryx could very well be behind the times. This video isn't talking about the right now, but about a possible moment in the future where one of many Leopards actually gets taken back to Russia and inspected. Taking a tank isn't necessarily easy. Just because we see images of abandoned tanks in no man's land doesn't mean Russia can easily take them. Ukraine's forces are close by and would likely shoot at any Russian attempts to tow away various vehicles. But as we said, eventually an event may happen where Russia may push the front line back, even just temporarily and locally, so a Leo tank or any other vehicle for that matter gets safely towed away. So what would happen then? Russia would send its specialists to inspect the vehicle. A tank like Leopard 2 is a complex machine, and there are many variants of it in existence. Some of those are now decades old. Tallying up all the Leo 2s pledged to Ukraine, Ukraine got or will get mostly the A4 variants, but also some A6 variants and Swedish Stridsvagn 122 Leo 2 variants. There are two main areas of interest to Russia, if it comes to a captured fairly intact NATO tank. One is how to better deal with them right away, in the weeks and months following the capture. That is done by examining how the tank and its subsystems perform. For example, how far away can its sensors see at what resolution? How do those work in the dark or through fog? How good is the fire control and stabilization system? What sort of precise acceleration figures could be expected? What sort of soil conditions might be problematic for the tank? Which parts of its armor are vulnerable against which kinds of threats? And so on. Such tests may be carried out fairly quickly and conclusions may be drawn within just days to weeks after the examination starts. The other main area is learning from observed technology and engineering solutions. Russia might conclude that some solutions on a NATO tank are superior enough to Russian solutions that a new engineering effort should be undertaken, where Russian engineers and scientists will try to learn from the Western solutions and apply them to future Russian vehicles and systems. Such examinations would take much longer and would be attempted only after the first set of tests for dealing with Leopards are finished, as those have priority. While there is enough public source data on A4 variants armor, where exactly on the tank is protection better and where is it poor, less such information is available for the later versions, namely the A6 variant. Swedish Stridsvagn 122 does have some info leaked out, but it too lacks precise armor composition. So Russia might learn the exact composition of the armor, how much of what sort of material is placed where, and what sort of NERA models are used and of what size and where. Decades ago, it was enough to just tailor armor against a kinetic penetrator or a shaped charge explosive found in missiles, but today that is not enough. Exact engineering of kinetic penetrators and shaped charges will yield different results against differently composed armor modules. But all that is not as useful as one might think. No country would create a whole new system of missiles and distribute them just to counter one specific tank. It would simply not be worth it. So Russia is likely to just stick with the best possible missile for a unit, for a wide range of targets, one with the best possible guidance. And whether that missile is sometimes an overkill, that would matter little. Even today, both Ukraine and Russia have often been using fairly pricey guided missiles against fairly unprotected targets such as armored cars, because that's what they had at hand, and it's important to pursue a target right away and neutralize soldiers inside it. Likewise, Russian tanks will not carry a whole range of new and different anti-tank rounds inside them. but will stick to the most potent ones they have, and use those regardless of whether the target is a Leo 2, an Abrams or a T-72. Sometimes in certain situations they may make a call to use a shaped charge projectile on some tanks instead of a kinetic penetrator, but in general almost nothing will change in the way Russia equips their infantry and tank units with weapons in the short term, even after everything that can be learned is learned about Leopard 2. Missiles and tank rounds aren't even the biggest contributor to overall tank losses in the war in Ukraine. Artillery of today is not the same as the artillery of World War II. The statistics of World War II applied to the US, which enjoyed great air supremacy, suppressing German artillery and aircraft, simply doesn't apply here. Today's artillery is often drone-corrected and drone-guided, with corrections being done in near real time, meaning even the first salvo can be quite precise, using satellites to determine locations of the drone, enemy tanks, and its own firing battery. While not often directly destroyed by artillery, tanks can be temporarily redirected or even stopped, making them more easy targets for subsequent attacks. Mines are likely even more dangerous than they were in World War II, with many novel and quick ways to precisely plant minefields, using gun-tube artillery, rocket artillery or aircraft, so defeating Leo's armor by changes in missile warheads and tank rounds may not be very high on the Russian list. But what can Russia really learn from Leopard 2 there? That its tracks will tear if a certain artillery round detonates 5 yards away from it and not 7 yards? And no one will really take that into account when actually firing onto a column of enemy armor. A barrage will be laid down and whatever is hit will be hit. With dozens of rounds falling around an armored column, there is not going to be much nuance to it. Tanks will get hurt, whether they're Abrams, Leos or T-80s. Immobile but not destroyed tanks are death traps on the battlefield, so it's not surprising if their crews will abandon them in a hurry, trying to save their lives. Perhaps slightly more useful to Russia in the short term might be if they learn of the sensor performance used in the Leos. For example, if they can deduce if a certain target type can be recognized by Leo's crew at 200 yards or 2500 yards, and then instruct their military to keep that in mind. But again, actually getting such discipline out of troops in combat may be too much to ask. What sort of sensor performance in what sort of low light conditions might also be useful, as well as how sensors do against a certain kind of augmented smoke cover. But all those will be very incremental improvements to tactics. In the end, even if Russia captures an intact Leopard 2 A6 tomorrow, it's not likely Russia would change anything about doing war for months. And if it does change something in the longer term, it might be very minor details, applied only by a small number of Russian units, perhaps some drone or helicopter units and specialized anti-tank units, leading to only marginally better results for Russia, against a very small subset of Ukrainian systems. Overall impact to the war effort would not be noticeable. To get back to what could Russia learn technologically from Leo 2, well, that depends on the exact model captured. A4s are going to be more plentiful and thus more likely to be captured eventually, but A4s use fairly basic armor that doesn't contain any real secrets anymore. Their sights are also 30 years old now, and Russia can produce its own sights of better performance. Sure, it may not be able to field those in quantity, but they are a known quantity. Getting their hands on an A6 might be a bit more profitable for Russia. Armor is more complex, and the exact choice of ceramics, polymers, steel alloys and rubber used might, with an accent on might, push Russia's own designers into a different direction. But realistically, there's only so many ways to skin a cat, or armor a tank. It's very likely Russia is already aware of comparable armor solutions to the package found on the 15-year-old A6. Sure, A6 will get them a chance to actually fire their anti-tank rounds onto an actual A6 armor, and thus an extra % of penetration might be eked out of future Russian anti-tank rounds to be designed. A6's thermal sights are also of the same generation as ones used on newest Russian tanks. Russia has been exposed to French second-generation thermal sights from 2008 onward, and had agreed to license production of those in 2012. So it's unlikely much could be gained there. Engine technology is something that could be somewhat improved using the German template. But again, we're talking about incremental improvements to reliability or power-to-weight ratio, and in a questionable time frame. Turkey has, for example, been exposed to German tank engines for a long time and has been trying to make their own engines for its domestic Altai tank. For now, they've settled for the South Korean engine, after years of work on the domestic engine. South Korea itself needed 10 years to make an acceptable domestic engine and transmission, modeled after the German engine and transmission, after being exposed to German tank engines for over 30 years and enjoying licensed production of said components. Given that Russia is already experienced in making various tanks and tank subsystems, any improvements they might enjoy would be incremental, and by the time they are applied, they would likely be hard to distinguish from the improvements Russia would attain on its own in the next 5 or more years. In the time frame of this particular war, the gains would be inconsequential. So Russia capturing a Leo 2 would be a non-event really, and it would be more or less the same if it manages to capture an Abrams later in the year, when those start coming to Ukraine. In the grand scheme of things, a particular tank or its technology does not come close to deciding a war. It may at times decide a small-scale exchange of fire, but even battles are decided by many more factors. Wars are complex events, and tank technology is comparatively only a minor variable.